Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, helping families love their homes again. Inspiration at callmosby.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Monday, September 22nd. I'm Abby Larico. 3 years after a St. Louis County man says he was attacked and an attempted carjacking sent his vehicle crashing through the Hazelwood Police Department, he is the one going to trial. St. Louis Public Radio's Wicentowski shares his investigation into the night it all happened, the possible retaliation at play, and what happens next in the case. That's coming up after this news on The Gateway. St. Louis officials are urging people to start preparing now for more demolition and debris removal on private property after the recent announcement of millions of dollars in tornado cleanup support from the federal government. St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson reports.
There's no start date set yet for private property debris removal. However, city officials say homeowners should start gathering their deeds, titles, and insurance papers for properties that need debris removal or demolition. Officials say people who have pertinent documents in homes with a yellow or red tag should contact the Recorder of Deeds or Legal Services of Eastern Missouri for replacements. Julian Nix is the city's chief recovery officer.
The one thing we want to give as reinsurance is that we are invested in making sure all debris is removed.
The city is also still doing emergency demolitions of properties that are falling on other homes. Reach out to 311 for an emergency demolition. I'm Andrea Henderson, St. Louis Public Radio.
Striking Boeing workers voted to approve a union-proposed contract Friday. It was then sent to Boeing as a pre-approved agreement in an attempt to end the 7-week-long strike in St. Louis. Union members who voted approved the 4-year contract proposal by 90%. The contract included 401k improvements, wage increases for top-paid employees, and a $10,000 signing bonus, up from the $4,000 that Boeing offered. In a response to the vote, a Boeing official said the company's previous offer remains available to vote on without the signing bonus included. Earlier last week, the same official called Friday's vote a, quote, waste of time. Hundreds of steel workers rallied in Granite City this weekend with the hope of securing a long-term commitment to keep the mill open beyond 2027. St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer reports the steelworkers are hoping to build their momentum after the mill's owner recently reversed the decision to shut down processing this fall.
Many in the United Steelworkers Union and their supporters believe there's a glimmer of hope. They'll continue to process, but not produce, steel until 2027. That's when the agreement between the federal government and the new owner, Nippon, runs out of protections for the Metro East mill. USW District Director Mike Millsap told the crowd he'd like Nippon to start up the blast furnaces and invest some of the $11 billion they promised other mills in granite.
It's the right thing to do, and they need to do it, and we need to try to push them to do it. Thank you all.
Now, the steelworkers need either the company or the Trump administration to heed their message. In Granite City, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
What the St. Louis sheriff does on the job and how much money he spends doing it are facing more scrutiny from the city. The St. Louis Board of Aldermen voted Friday to define Sheriff Alfred Montgomery's duties and place his office under financial monitoring for the next year. STLPR's Brian Munoz reports.
The move comes after the board's budget committee found St. Louis Sheriff Alfred Montgomery's office was facing a deficit of more than $600,000. There is also debate whether the sheriff's office is required to transport detainees to receive medical and psychiatric care. The board is now compelling them to do so. Fifth Ward Alderman Matt Devote is Board Bill 33's sponsor. He says the legislation provides much-needed reassurance to the public.
To the extent that they are concerned about detainees getting prompt medical transport outside of the CJC, that is something we don't have to worry about.
A spokesperson for the sheriff's office says they plan to sue the city once Mayor Kara Spencer signs the bill into law. I'm Brian Munoz, St. Louis Public Radio.
A Cole County judge has ordered the rewrite of a ballot measure aimed at reversing the abortion rights amendment voters passed last year. Lawmakers are putting a constitutional amendment before voters to repeal Amendment 3. That's the 2024 ballot item that legalized abortion throughout the state. Opponents of this new measure sued, contending the summary that voters would read on their ballots is misleading and that the proposal contains multiple subjects. Cole County Judge Daniel Green didn't toss the proposal off the 2026 ballot entirely, but he did order a new ballot summary because it didn't tell voters that it repeals much of Amendment 3. The proposed measure would also be known as Amendment 3. It would allow for a ban on most abortions, with some exceptions for the life of the mother, fatal fetal abnormalities, and some cases of rape or incest. Missouri Democrats are preparing for a 2026 election cycle featuring a slew of high-stakes ballot initiatives. St. Louis Public Radio's Jason Rosenbaum reports on the challenge ahead for the party's candidates.
With the auditor's contest as the only statewide race, 2026 wasn't expected to be a critical election cycle in Missouri. But that's changed after Missouri Republicans put ballot items curtailing abortion and the initiative petition process up for statewide votes. Mark Osmak, who is running for the St. Louis County Council next year, says his party can go on the offensive by gathering signatures to place a new congressional map up for a vote.
And I think in 2026, the jig is up and it starts to come around back to them.
Democrats are also hoping to break the GOP supermajority in the General Assembly by capturing Republican-held House and Senate seats. I'm Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio.
St. Charles County Executive Steve Ellman says the region's leaders need to be prepared for the rise of massive data centers. An uproar over a proposed facility prompted the St. Charles City Council to place a moratorium on data centers, which have sparked widespread environmental and energy-related concerns. Ellman says he understands why the data centers are controversial, but also says there's a middle ground between not regulating them at all and banning them.
People need to be heard if this is going to impact their neighborhoods. But it's a sort of situation, again, when we have a discussion, I hope the next discussion is a little bit more balanced here and people will listen to each other a little better than they did.
Ellman was a guest on the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. You can listen to his full interview at stlpr.org. A chapter of the right-wing political group Turning Point USA may be on its way to the Francis Howell School District. According to an announcement posted to its website, the Political Action Committee Francis Howell Families says it's offering at least $1,000 to students in the St. Charles County District looking to start a chapter at one of their high schools. The PAC says it's working with some Missouri lawmakers, like Congressman Bob Onder, to support students as they get their chapters started. The announcement comes after the organization's founder, Charlie Kirk, was killed earlier this month during a campus event in Utah. Turning Point USA has more than 800 chapters on college campuses around the country and says it's seen an uptick in interest from students after Kirk's death. Local chapters are already established at most St. Louis area universities and at Eureka High School, according to the organization's website. A U.S. district judge has ruled that students for justice in Palestine at the University of Missouri can participate in the annual homecoming parade this weekend. The judge determined that University of Missouri System President Moon Choi violated the group's First Amendment rights when he denied its parade application. Choi cited safety concerns, but the judge found that wasn't legitimate enough to infringe on their freedom of speech. Ahmed Kaki, who represented the group in court, said the students showed courage.
We obviously think that the court has done the right thing by allowing them in and holding that the university's decision to exclude them in the first place was unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination.
The University of Missouri declined to comment on the ruling. St. Louis Symphony Orchestra offered a sneak peek of the renovated Powell Hall and new expansion Friday after raising $173 million to make the project happen. St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin was there.
Liberty Fanfare by John Williams was the first thing the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra played in Powell Hall after a 2-year renovation. An invited audience watched the performance Friday morning and explored a 65,000 square foot expansion that includes a new rehearsal studio. SLSO President and CEO Marie-Hélène Bernard said it was a historic moment.
Welcome home. Today we launch a new era, the most transformational moment in the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra's 146-year history.
The general public will get its first look and listen on September 26th. I'm Jeremy Goodwin, St. Louis Public Radio.
A jury will soon consider the case of Phillip March, who's charged with crashing his car into the Hazelwood Police Department in 2022. But moments before his red Mustang drove through the wall of the city building, March says he was fighting off an attack and an attempted carjacking. So why is he the one in trouble with the law? St. Louis On the Air producer Danny Wicentowski has been investigating this case. Danny, you've reviewed surveillance footage from that night. What story does that tell?
This video is dramatic. It shows Phillip March on June 24th, 2022, diving through the driver's side window of his own car and fighting the man who had just attacked him and took his keys inside a Quick Trip in Hazelwood. This attacker was actually March's roommate, a man named Jamez Block. The two fight inside a moving car as it travels several hundred feet until it crashes into a wall belonging to the Hazelwood Police Department.
Wow, so prosecutors are basing their case on this video, and it shows that March actually wasn't the driver, but he was charged with a DWI?
That is what happened. Police initially identify Phillip March as a potential person who was driving under the influence. He denies drinking that night, and Hazelwood eventually dropped that DWI case just days after giving March this surveillance footage, the footage that shows that very attack.
So March is, though, being charged with property damage. Why does he think the case is being made against him?
The timing is a big part of it. After Hazelwood dropped that DWI case, he sent them a letter basically telling them he was about to file a $25 million lawsuit. A few days after that letter, Hazelwood charges March with property damage and charges Jamez Block with property damage.
What's his status in all of this?
So March's roommate, again Jamez Block, he is on the video attacking Phillip March and then trying to drive off in his Mustang. I did want to ask Block for his side of the story, but I was not able to contact him. And it looks like the court system is also having trouble delivering mail to him, and his case has seemingly been stalled out since February of this year.
Danny, that lawsuit that March had planned to file, is that going anywhere?
March did file that lawsuit. He's seeking $25 million in damages on charges that include false imprisonment and malicious prosecution. That trial is set for next year.
How about Hazelwood prosecutors? What do they have to say?
That is an interesting part of this. Phillip March has been very aggressive in his claims that Hazelwood is retaliating against him, that it's unfairly charging him with a crime in which he is a victim. I did ask questions of Hazelwood's prosecuting attorney, Stephanie Carr, especially about what is happening with Jamez Block, the man who is really on the video doing so much in this incident, the fighting, the stealing, things that Phillip March did not do. I did not get a response from Hazelwood's prosecutor about those questions, and it is still unclear what the status of Jamez Block's case is. Will he ever face trial? It's just not clear.
What comes next?
Phillip March has been very active in his own legal defense. He is facing trial on this property damage charge. If convicted, that could carry up to 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine.
You can find more of STLPR's Danny Wicentowski's reporting on this at stlpr.org. Danny, thanks so much.
Great to be here.
The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway.